bit difficult. Yes, sorry, I don't know where that came from, but from somewhere. Look, both David and Gareth asked me to extend a special welcome from them today and to apologise for the fact that they're not here, but they look forward to seeing you, of course, in the not too distant future. And I know that you've got staff that have accompanied you today, and we've got people in the public gallery and, of course, on Zoom. I have to say our Zoom system is not always great. It's one of my little bugbears, but I hope it's going to work well today. We have some very interesting difficulties with it. But we're really happy to have you here, and I don't think I really need to say this, but I'm going to anyway. We are very proud and passionate Taupoians, and you only have to look out our window to see why, and that inspires us whenever our community is telling us we're not doing very well, which is not that often, but to look out the window reinforces all that for us. So, look, people are pouring into Taupo to both visit and live, and we're actually way ahead of our 10-year numbers in terms of our population, which we're really surprised about. And look, we've actually done pretty well since COVID, which we certainly weren't expecting, and I know some of you will have been affected in the same way, but with our borders being closed, of course, people love to come and holiday here, and we welcome them with open arms. We've got a massive amount of work on at Council at the moment, and I'm not going to read you the very long list, but a few examples of things that we're doing is we're doing the transformation of our town centre, which is an enormous process and a lot of change for our people. Some of them are very excited and some of them are a little bit worried about that, but that was a shovel-ready project, and it is an absolutely huge project. We're also just starting our big destination playground work. We had the blessing last week, and the current playground is going to be cordoned off from this weekend, so we're also excited about that. And we've had quite a significant restructuring of our level 2, 3 and 4. So we're in the middle of that at the moment. We have a whole new executive team who's come together very quickly and very well, and we're excited about what they're going to do in the future. So really those three things are just the tip of the iceberg of what we're doing. We are very busy, and I'm sure we're in exactly the same position as many of you. I do want to acknowledge our staff, because they've been magnificent throughout our challenges, and we're very proud of them. And whenever I get the opportunity, I tell the community how very, very lucky they are to have the people working in this organisation that do. Having worked throughout a lot of councils, don't worry, it's in the Auckland area, when I was part of a consultancy, we are really lucky. And from what I hear from some of you guys, you're in exactly the same position. So I think that's a blessing. So look, once again, welcome. We're looking really forward to spending the morning with you. And the plan is to break for morning tea at 10:30. And then of course we have lunch at the conclusion of the meeting. So I believe I need to read the statement about recording the meeting. The Mayoral Forum is being recorded and will be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council website following the meeting and archived for a period of 3 years. To those members of the public here today, I don't think there are any, but all care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor to the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the public gallery, it is understood your consent is given if your image is inadvertently broadcast. I also remind all present that local government decision-making affords no protection to councillors, council officers and the public for comments made during meetings that are subsequently challenged in a court of law and determined to be slanderous. These meetings must be very exciting. I'm sorry I haven't attended before. Thank you for that. Now our apologies. I have a list of apologies. Mayor David Truavis, Commission Chair Anne Tolley, Chief Executive Marty Grenfell, Chief Executive Aileen Laurie and Chief Executive Gareth Green. Are there any further apologies? Do I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you very much. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. And acceptance of late items. Mayor Chadwick has asked that the following items be added to the agenda: wider regional facilities and rail and race course, and those are going to be discussed at the end of the meeting. Okay, the minutes, the previous minutes from the 12th of March 21. We've been advised of a correction to the minutes that Russell George incorrectly was listed as the Chief Executive for Rotorua Lakes Council, changed to Kawerau District Council. Are there any other matters arising?
Through the chair, just I'm sort of up here as absent during the meeting, but I was there 9:30 to 1, so I don't know. I had to dump out.
Sure, we'll change that. Anything else? No. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Excellent, thank you. Thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Perfect. Okay, now for our first presentation from Hastings District Council, Nigel Bickle. And can I tell you, Nigel is the youngest person ever appointed to an executive team in the public sector. It was my appointment, and I only ever chose people with absolute talent. I didn't care how old they were, on either end of the spectrum or where they came from. And look, I was right. Look where he is now. So everything he knows, I've taught him. And we're going to experience that this morning. Nigel, it's lovely to see you. It was a long time ago we worked together, but it's great to see you in local government because you did a heck of a lot in the public sector. So welcome. It's all yours.
Oh, well, i ngā rangatira mo rena koutou, he ona re kanui te mihi kia koutou, ko tōsawili Nigel Bickle tuku wingoa, ke te me whakarai o te kaunihira rohi o here taunga. So awesome to be with you. Can I just start by acknowledging that most regions in New Zealand and lots of communities have a housing crisis to a lesser or greater extent across availability, typology, price, emergency housing, homelessness, and that all councils are playing strong leadership roles for their community and brokering solutions. So I'm not here to kind of promote Hastings or say that what we're doing is amazing or it's all the answers. It's simply to share a story of a couple of years in now to taking this place-based partnership between local government, central government, iwi and our community, and to give you a little bit of sense of what we've done in our context, what's been delivered, what's worked, what we've learned along the way. And so I really appreciate the opportunity of coming along and talking with you. And if there's something that might be useful in terms of helping the work that you're doing, can't fight. So who's driving the preso? I'm just, because we're going to start with a video, I hope.
Yes.
No, I just walked out.
No worries, I'll do it for you. Okay, lucky I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. You just tell me what you would like.
Okay, that's right. Look, we'll start with the why. So in our context, obviously our vision is one that's our regional economic and social development strategy, which is every whānau's thriving through benefiting and participating and contributing to a strong economy and community. So like a lot of places in New Zealand, our context, the why, at the moment, that's not true for a couple of thousand people in our community. So we currently have 1,700 people living in motels across Napier and Hastings. The Crown last year spent just over $20 million on emergency motel accommodation. And yeah, unfortunately for all the success we're having, it's not getting any better. So when we put it into the context of when we started this journey in April 2019, we had 880 people living in motels. So it's doubled over the space of 2 years. So we've still got some pretty big challenges. And in our context, you know, we call it a housing crisis. For us, it's predominantly a Māori housing crisis. So 73% of our motel emergency housing population are Māori. The focus for us, and I should explain the origins of this, came about, I started as the Chief Executive of Hastings District Council February 2019, and within a week, Mayor Sandra said, I'm sick of waiting for government. You come up with a plan for this housing crisis. I worked with Andrew Crisp, who had just been appointed as the Chief Executive of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, and we were having a conversation. He was relatively new in his role and was talking about, geez, we're you know, working with the Labor government and, you know, trying to revisit things like Kiwi Build. And he said to me, he said, look, one of the issues I've got right today is why did we underwrite 300 houses in Wanaka that nobody wants? And I said, well, perhaps did that idea come from Wanaka, or did you decide that's what Wanaka needed? And it was this really interesting conversation that I said, look, I haven't been in Hastings long, but the things that I think are driving some of the things in our housing market are not things that are common across all communities in New Zealand. So for us, one of the things that was causing challenges was, well, we have to accommodate 5,000 Pacific Island workers for 7 months of the year. You know, we're a strong visitor economy. We've got these dimensions. And so it ended up being this conversation around going, well, how do you get your national settings right, but work at a community level to understand what the right answers are for place? And that's what kind of started the sort of whole place-based conversation. And we took an opportunity on, it's actually 26 months ago today, when Prime Minister Ardern came to Waipatu Marae. And we had a fairly simple proposition, which was, look, we all want the same thing, and it's actually not working at the moment. We don't have all of the solutions, but we've got some ideas. And how about if we kind of put the Crown's resources together with the Council's resources and iwi, and you gave us 8 weeks, we reckon we could come up with a plan. It would be a plan that wouldn't be any easy quick fixes. It would require a commitment to work at this in partnership for a number of years, because it will take years to sort. So we did that, and we put up a plan within 8 weeks. And then how government works, those of us that have been in it love it. You know, it took then 6 months to get decisions, but ministers turned up to Waipatu Marae in December 2019, and they announced the start of this place-based initiative. Importantly for our community, they turned up with more than just goodwill. They turned up with a commitment to build 180 public houses in 18 months. They turned up with $9 million for our iwi to build Papakainga housing, turned up with $1 million for an initiative with our district health board to focus on healthy homes. And we got underway. But these are, you know, this has been a journey of real partnership and everything that goes with that since. So one of the things that we focused in on wasn't not just making this about public housing. Public housing is just one component part of a housing market working. And we did a lot of work early on about getting the whole housing continuum right. Across all the different segments of the housing market, the things that we know that we're accountable for in local government, that we've got forward land supply for the right typologies of housing. You know, we had some issues around homelessness, a small but growing population of homelessness, right through to things that were particular to us. Well, how do we accommodate in our horticultural sector a largely migrant workforce for not all year round, but 7 months of the year, right through to, you know, some common challenges that probably all of us are facing, like an aging population. And the thing that we're really worried about is that whilst we've got lots of Bupas and Somersets and Rymans being built, we've got an aging population that actually don't have any equity, that are looking for affordable rental retirement sort of housing. So it's been a real focus about trying to not just be focused on one thing, but understand that it's been getting 6 or 7 things actually working in tandem with a short, medium and long-term view. So we talk a lot about typologies. So it has been, well, actually, yes, we need good public and social housing, but we also need the market. Well, we need the housing market to be delivering affordable starter homes, which certainly in our context, the market hasn't been doing that for a long time. When most of the price points in our world are now $700,000-800,000 to get into new homes. For a lot of our population, that's not even close to being possible. I mean, it blows my mind to think that in 2014 in Hastings, the median house price was $243,000. For the month May, just ended, the median house price in Hastings now is $808,000. So, you kind of go, geez, pretty big challenges. So what's guided us through all of this has been a vision, a set of really clear objectives, and a bunch of principles that all of the partners have signed up to. So principles of its partnership, that actually this has to be Māori-led and iwi-led housing solutions. And, everything that's gone with partners. Because, you kind of learn that, yep, geez, you've got to actually have a generous disposition and give the benefit of the doubt, and things will go wrong. And if we just kind of chuck crap at one another, it doesn't, it's how do you build trust? And it's hard in this space because of what's at stake. But we've delivered quite a lot. So as I say, we got a $9 million pipeline of papakoinga funding, which has brought another 39 papakoinga houses to market. We had a $1 million Healthy Homes initiative, which I think, so the Healthy Homes initiative was saying we have a whole lot of whānau in our community that own their own home but are substandard and have no means to lift the standard of their housing. And from a public health perspective, we did this as a partnership between the DHB and Puni Kōkiri. When whānau with 11 kids are consuming the District Health Board's resource for admissions for rheumatic fever and asthma and chronic health conditions, actually spending $30,000 on addressing the root cause of that, like re-roofing homes or insulating homes, makes a lot of sense from a public policy perspective. We have built a lot of public sort of houses, and just to give you a sense of, might not mean enough, because in our context, we're a population of 80,000 across the Hastings district. We currently have 145 public houses under construction today, having delivered about 140 of the 181 that was promised to be delivered. We have 35 affordable homes on council's land currently being constructed. We go to market in 3 weeks' time for 3 council land holdings with 200 affordable houses being brought to market. We have a Māori housing village that 80 sections are currently being laid out on, and the end vision in 3 years is to have 160 houses built in one of our Māori housing villages. So we've got a lot of momentum, but it takes time. And the thing that, when you're really results focused, it's kind of, it just takes a little bit of time to set this up to get the momentum going. But it is about building a pipeline across, is what we've learned, across all your segments. So at the moment, we're, for example, very focused with our Crown partners, and we're saying, well, short term for you is the 30 months to the next general election. And you have to deliver the government's purchasing intentions. You want to get a whole lot of people out of motels. So, in the short term, you have to be focused on the land that you've got that's able to have houses built on. And so there is no point thinking that in the short term, anything that needs rezoning or a structure plan or a plan change, that's medium term. That's the next term of government. So where are the land holdings that you've got that are zoned, the infrastructure's going in or can go in, because you know, chances are of getting things built in that time frame with the way our planning systems work, it's kind of a bit challenging. But on learnings, the thing that has been powerful for us is in 2019, the government said, yep, we'll endorse the Hastings housing plan. We've just had the government endorse our long-term housing strategy. So the important thing is it's our strategy, and the government's come out and publicly committed to implementing our housing strategy. And so we have the objectives always to default back to. So a practical example at the moment, you're probably all living this dream. Kāinga Ora, and Darren, I acknowledge he was our first director for the Hastings place-based approach. Right now we're under a lot of pressure to deliver, and we're putting a lot of pressure on them. What we're worried about at the moment is that the pressure on numbers and some of the choices that are being made around market acquisitions and transitional housing, the pressure to get scale in our world is saying, well, no, sorry, actually you acquiring and putting 49 townhouses all into transitional housing, sorry, we need the housing, but our objective was, yes, housing's important, but housing's build neighbourhoods and communities, and we've agreed, and an objective is we will have no large scale social housing. We will have land developments with 25 to 30% being public and transitional housing, but we've learned these lessons from decades ago around what you get when you concentrate. Now, I don't know what Stevie, back in our time, it was probably called pepper potting. It's probably called something else today, but we're talking about building communities, and that means, no, we're not doing large scale, whatever the pressure is on the numbers. And we can do that because we can default back to and say, but that was the Hastings housing strategy, and those are the objectives that we agreed to. And so it's been really important to be able to anchor everything back to that. Governance and delivery arrangements are key. So since from the very start, our Ngahiwi Tomoana, Chair of Ngāti Kahungunu was involved, our Tai Whenua were involved, government agencies at a senior level were involved, and we have every month since, it's governed at an executive level by myself, the chair of the iwi, was Andrew Chris for a long time, Brad Ward now is his deputy. It's the senior partners that govern it, and then at a delivery level, every 2 weeks at an operational level, the cross-agency team are meeting and they're driving against an agreed delivery plan. And that's the only way that we've known how to get things done, is, you know, across every segment, it's like, these are the actions, these are the deliverables, these are the pipelines. Are we on track? If not, why not? What do we need to do to help? Does it need to get kicked up the chain to get sort of unblocked? But that governance and delivery focus has been key to delivering results. The other thing that was great, being the pilot, Brian Donnelly, who's a long-time legend in community housing, set up Sir Stephen Tyndall's Housing Foundation. So Brian's been involved with us since day one. He's paid for by the Crown, and he is the conscience and critical friend that plays the role outside of all of the agency stuff around keeping us honest. And that's been really an important part of our journey. And then it's where you find your other friends. So Sir Brian Roach, who was the interim chair of Kāinga Ora, of course, forget he's a Hastings boy. So he came in and spent a lot of time with us at the front end and helped us to shape things up. Funding levers, let's be honest, like this cannot happen without the Crown bringing funding to the table. You know, I talk about the fact we're a council that doesn't own a lot of land, but we had some land holdings, particularly in Flaxmere. There's a reason that we're bringing a whole lot of affordable housing to market, because we cut a big deal with the Crown, and the Crown said, here's council, here's a $16 million grant to pay for all of the infrastructure and services on your land holdings that allows us to take 200, you know, a yield of 200 to the market, because we would never have done it without the Crown's funding, because we could never have taken the risk in terms of the holding costs and trying to recover it through development contributions. So these conversations that are very live now as we head into a world that has infrastructure funds, accelerated housing funds, it's having different funding levers if we're going to play a different role as local government. The other thing I'd say is just from a leadership and resourcing perspective, we have some direct accountabilities like land supply, planning, resourcing, consenting. But our role in this space has been leadership and coordination across all the agencies. It's felt pretty unsustainable for, I probably spend between 30 and 40% of my time on housing. And I have a team of 6 people now that are just full-time coordinating, the delivery of this program. But I'm not sure that it would have happened without it. So I'll just play you a couple of videos to finish off, because this kind of sums up the...
Hastings has a thriving economy, diverse community, fertile plains and stunning climate. However, like the rest of New Zealand, we have a housing crisis. In 5 years, emergency housing needs rose 600%. Our region had 2,000 people living in motels, unable to find homes as rent and house prices rose. We needed new ideas and new ways of working, leveraging available resources to find solutions fast to implement, but still providing quality homes. We needed strong partnerships with people who really care. Mana whenua, Council, the Crown, funders and community support groups at the coalface supporting people who face constant uncertainty about where they would sleep.
Together we had to address housing our homeless, upgrading existing housing to make it healthier, getting families out of emergency accommodation, housing our seasonal workers, long-term social housing for families and seniors, and helping first home buyers. All this without negatively impacting our world-famous fertile growing soils. In the past 12 months, we have 3 new papakainga developments, 3 mixed model housing developments limited to people who will live in the homes. A major housing project is underway with more in the planning stages. Dedicated seasonal worker accommodation, taking pressure off our rental market. Changed planning rules encouraging higher density in inner city housing. Crown funding for an accelerated social housing program, and most significantly, 534 building consents were issued in 2020. That's up 46% on 2019. Our plan, accepted by government as a New Zealand pilot, is building homes for our people now.
And we've got one other video that will show you, and this was the Healthy Homes initiative, which I think is one that we're really keen to push on a bigger scale.
Just if this is the same one again, then I'll show it.
No, this is it.
During COVID, my granddaughter said to me, "Oh, Nanny, the walls are crying." So this one here. So, I think as an adult, you put up with a lot. You make do with what you've got, but when you've got the grandkids coming in, you got to go to another level.
Black mould, research is showing now, has got more of a detrimental effect on health than a house infected with methamphetamine. So this family was sleeping in these rooms with black mould.
Unbeknown to us, a lot of the mould that was in her home was caused because she had a roof that had concrete tiles, and back in the day when they built those homes, they didn't put the black paper underneath. So essentially what we now know is that those style of homes, they will always be damp and cold because the concrete tiles cause moisture and it goes into all the internal walls.
The house is 66 years old. The first time anything has been done. The drains were blocked, the electricals were hanging, only 2 lights were going, and back in the day you only had 1 power point, so I had 2 leads coming into the bedrooms that each had a power point, and all these connected to the one socket.
The difference in the house is huge. The bedrooms have been relined. painted, there's new carpet, and the roof has actually been replaced because that's what the cause of the black mould. There was water that was dripping down into the walls.
The end result is like walking into a new home. Ever so grateful for the help from DHB, TPK, you know, and of course the builders. Prior to this, it would be warmer outside than inside.
How about you, Bailey? What do you think's different about the house now?
That the walls are not crying anymore.
What are the walls like now?
They're like normal.
Nice and warm.
Nice and warm.
And if you've got time for 2 minutes, I'll show you the last, which is the Tarbert Street development that we've just opened. Tarbert Street in West Flaxmere. So this is one that's 35 houses, 18 houses are social transitional, being leased back to the Crown for 30
Welcome to
years.
Tarbert Street, our new fabulous housing development. And look how amazing it looks. This is an exciting day, a day that we've been waiting for. And only 9 months ago did we stand here in the middle of winter with a great big coat on and a big fur hat and a shovel, and turned the sod of this land. And how amazing that day was, because that was the beginning of new homes for our whānau.
Now I have the home that I want, and I really want to give my appreciation to the council for giving me this opportunity of being a first home buyer. And it's a dream come true. Being a single mum, working hard, and I never thought this would happen so soon and at this time in life for me.
So this is a real example of what I think councils can do. In our context, to say we don't have a lot of land. We have 4 land parcels of about 10 hectares in Flaxmere. This one was just a barren piece of land down in West Flaxmere. We basically did a deal where the Crown paid the $2 million that it cost to put all of the infrastructure in. We facilitated a deal between Wallace Development, who's one of our best quality developers in Hawke's Bay, where he's building 18 transitional social homes that he's going to continue to own, and he's leased back to the Crown for 35 years. The wraparound services are being provided by our Tai Whenua, and then the balance of that development, 17 sections, we have basically taken to the market and sold as affordable first homes. So they're all sold, there's waiting lists, $130,000 for a fully serviced section. But then the things that we have done and that we can do, because we're the landowners, is we can protect, one, the quality by the covenants. So it has to be 120 square metres, has to be landscape. But the other thing, of course, we've been able to do is say you can't be an investor, you can't be a company, you have to be a first individual home buyer. And in effect, because whilst we've done this at fair value to the ratepayer, so it sold for 130,000, obviously helped that the Crown met all the costs of the infrastructure. The other thing we've said in effect is we're giving you the opportunity on behalf of the community to own an affordable first home. And if you sell that house within 5 years, you have to pay 12% of the sale price back to the council, because what we want to do is to continue to be rolling out affordable housing product to our community. And and probably the last thing on the affordable side is working with the Housing Foundation at the moment, who are looking to come to town and bring some of their shared equity products, which is a big feature of our Māori housing village as well, is needing products other than just what we've got at the moment, because for all of the KiwiSaver caps and that, for a lot of our whānau, 500, 550,000, get out to Flaxmere, might as well be $2 million broke, and so finding other pathways to home ownership. But anyway, that's enough from me, and hopefully just gives you a sense of some of the things we've been doing in Hastings, and happy to take any questions.
No, thank you. It's incredible what you've achieved, and it's very inspiring. Can I ask you how much in monetary terms, how much does it cost the council?
Not in the scheme of things, not a lot. It's probably been it's time. So time has a cost, obviously, but it's probably circa about $1 million a year now across the team that we've got, the work that we're doing. We're doing pretty well at using other people's money as well, because the Crown partners can bring resource and stuff as well, but it's probably in the order of $1 million in terms of the cost of time, consultancy, the team that's driving the work.
Thank you. I'm sure there are lots of other questions and comments, so we'll open it up.
I just want to say congratulations, Nigel, as a girl from Hastings. That's really exciting to see the traction that I think you've got through the partnership with iwi and government and leadership. I was a bit surprised at your level of investment that you had to put in. I would say ours is substantially more than that to get that leverage of Crown funding to come in.
Yeah.
But well done. And after the housing conference that was held in Hastings, I hear we're hosting it, or we're trying to host it.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Because the stories are growing around the region. But it's inspiring really to see what you can do. And this is a new model. And I can't believe, well, I'll tell our little story in a minute, but it's great. You've got that start, you've got moving so fast. I can't wait till we've really got the cranes up. They are up, but people can't see it as visibly as the whole subdivision, but it's coming, and so you've inspired us. But I think what works for you is a slightly different fit for what might work for those of us in our own cities. But it's great to hear.
Thanks, Ms. Stevie. Yeah.
Thank you. Very inspiring. The question comes out of what you said, and our council sent to me about 3 or 4 years ago to Sydney to an affordable housing summit. And the thing that struck me the most in everything I heard there was how few tools we apply here in New Zealand compared to internationally. What I wanted to ask you about was whether, because I heard something you said, mate, struck me about it. One of the things, I think it was an American project, and I'm not sure whether it's state-based or across the whole country, but housing developers, people who that's their daily bread, are required by law. I can't remember, there was 10 or 20% of every development has to have that percentage of affordable housing, and obviously have definitions around what that feels like. And apparently it's well accepted because it applies fairly to everybody. I've heard of a couple of councils that have looked to do it here in New Zealand. My concern is that all that means is that the developers won't go there because they have that limitation placed on them. And it feels to me like something the government should do. But I'm just, did you have any of that where developers, obviously they worked with you in that space as well?
So in our current medium to long-term housing strategy, so there's like 6 streams of work and about 26 actions, and in the policy and settings space, there is work that we're doing with the Crown, because what you're talking about is inclusionary zoning, and that is on our work program to explore. Because let's be honest, part of the issue, in our world is what we haven't had. Markets are wonderful things, but they achieve to, they exist to achieve their objectives, which is largest return to the shareholder. And the market's been playing where the biggest returns are, and that's not been in delivering affordable starter homes. Increasingly it's all, in our world, it's all become, everything's sort of, minimum 500 square metre sort of sections, big houses. We've got a real debate going on in Flaxmere at the moment, and Steve, you might remember this from Hastings. 30 years ago, we've got a terrible legacy in the west end of Flaxmere. We allowed developers, Horizon Homes, at the tail end of the days when you could capitalise family benefit, to build a whole lot of ticky-tacky houses on cross-lease sections with no streetscape and landscape requirements. And then we wondered 20 years later while we had terrible community outcomes. But we've got a live debate at the moment saying, yeah, and in our desire to deal with our legacy issue, where we've imposed covenants where, you know, houses need to be a minimum of 135 square metres, and they've got to have a double internal access garage, and they've got to be fully landscaped and streetscaped. You know, well, yeah, like what does the affordable first home look like? So the first home I ever lived in Porirua was a 90-metre square fibrillite box on a piece of dirt, and you had to put your own driveway and footpaths in. So these are the tricky balances to try and get right in terms of how you put your, you know, your settings and your district plan requirements.
The interesting thing of this thing was the definition of affordable was for the life of the house, not just for the build. And I think that you're completely right. I think our towns are full of ticky places that we built exactly at that time. Where people will, and then often had to forfeit their house because when they had to pick up the loan themselves, they couldn't do it and it went into the.
Yeah, we've got big debates going on in the environmental standards at the moment, you know, sort of saying, yeah, we know over the life of a house it would be good on these affordable first homes that council's doing to require it all to be solar or, you know, renewable energy. But you're all confronted with the here and now going, yeah, but it's going to add another 20 or 30,000 on at the front end of the cost, and who bears it, and you know, how do you structure and finance that? So these become, I guess, like always, the you know, the trade-offs against your, you know, what's your hierarchy of objectives.
Darren, you're next, and then Steve. But can I just remind you to use your microphones because it's being recorded. It's hard to pick up without.
Thanks, Nigel. I think you made a real valid point. Your organisation's Wallace, which you work with, we were very fortunate. I think you've got to see also it's not a cost to council, it's a return on investment. Ours is getting close to 300 houses, and inclusionary zoning, you don't need that. If you own the land, which is what we found, we went to a joint venture with a very good developer. We also said these are the price points. We also said this is how we want to master plan the whole development. We've got Darren in the back there, kind of or partly involved in it. Took a while to get them to dance, but they're learning fast. And when we look at our pensioner housing, if you go back when they were built, the utilisation of land was abysmal. So now, and I think the thing that we're starting to look at is even going up to 6 stories to get better utilisation of the land. So we're getting a better return on our investment. We've got the land sitting there. So, you know, I think we've got to look at it as an investment. How do we maximise the value? And finding a really good developer, and ours, the classic builder, was unbelievable. You know, we started off with 25% had to be at a price point below the median, 25% even further below the median, and the developer could do what he liked with the other 50%. Partway through the process, of the very early stages, the developer made the point that he can make more money and sell them quicker at the lower price point. So we saw a significant change. About, I'd say 75% will come in at less than 50% of the median price.
Oh, they're really great points that you raised. We, so if you look at senior housing in a Hastings context, we own 221 senior houses, but we're probably like a lot of councils. We did a deal with the government back in the day. The fundamentals just don't work when the only funding lever you have is rates. So our work that we've done, and the problem, you know, when you do the problem definition, you go, well, we own 221 houses. We've got a massive waiting list. We charge, you know, nominal sort of rents, and you can't earn a revenue stream because you can't earn the income-related rent subsidy. So you can't maintain your asset. You can't do additionality. But we're in a conversation with the Crown right now, as I'm sure a number of councils are, that sort of say, if you wanted council to get in the game and do additionality, then you've got to bring other levers to the table. If you allowed us to be a community housing provider and get an income-related rent subsidy, If you brought some of your infrastructure tools to the table, we would do, because we've got the same thing, underutilisation of our existing senior housing land holdings, all end of life. We would do more, but there has to be an openness to using different funding levers than we have today, because otherwise it's the ratepayer that has to pick up the tab. We are exploring with Brian Donnelly and the Housing Foundation one of the ideas. One of the things we're really nervous about is housing as a focus for the current government in the current context. But there's a reason that Darren got so many houses built in Hastings in the last 18 months, because they had lots of clean sites from taking down a whole lot of houses in 2014 and 15 that they could go and put new houses on. But governments come and go and priorities change. Our thing is going at a community level, we want a long-term sustainable situation, and we're saying we think the best thing would be ending up with a place-based entity. And so one of the ideas we've got is going, well, actually across 3 councils in our region, we've probably got a $70 million portfolio of senior houses. We've got some land, we've got some cash, and we're having a conversation going, well, maybe if we partnered with our local partners and our iwi, and then went to the Crown and said, we've got a couple of $100 million worth of community assets, and we want you to match that dollar for dollar in a constituted place-based entity, then you start to get to, because I think the other thing we've learned over time, if you can't do this at scale with a balance sheet, it's all suboptimal. Like to do, you know, ongoing land development and tenancy management, you have to have scale. Otherwise, you can't pay for staff and systems and expertise. So I think there's something absolutely in that, but it's going to require some different tools and settings than the ones that we've got at the moment.
Just around your homeless and those service supports before you can get them ready for transition and social housing. Tell me about how you wrested away the regional heads of government to work with you on that.
It's ongoing work. So homelessness initially wasn't in the scope of our place-based approach. What we have, and like I'm not an expert in this area, I think that there's a place for in the you know, the housing first models, and down our way the providers like WIT and Emerge Aotearoa doing a good job with homeless, but it's a very conditional model. Very conditional. We're busy working with some community providers at the moment, and of all places, churches that have a lot of money and a social investment sort of framework to say, we think the missing piece at the moment is a set of services and a model for homeless that the housing first model doesn't fit because it's so conditional. So yeah, it's challenging in the homeless space. So we're kind of leaving health and social services to kind of run the you know, the more established housing first model. We're putting a lot of energy at the moment is around yeah, kind of an emergent approach, I would call it, where it doesn't kind of neatly fit yeah, the current paradigm.
My question is around Papakaianga. How have you worked in partnership, especially around the funding for such work?
Yep. So one of the things that I'm most proud of and can take no credit for is that Hastings, for a long period of time, has made Papakaianga work. So we built up until the latest set of initiatives, we'd built hundreds of Papakaianga houses because we have a hugely enabling district plan around Papakaianga, and we have a fantastic regional Te Puni Kōkiri team that understand the challenge in the Papakaianga space is just we don't have long-term sustainable funding streams. So like we've got, you know, quite a lot of whānau that, you know, because it's a process here of working them through kainga, sorted, and getting them all to a space where they can realise those aspirations of a home back on the whenua. But then you need the funding, you know, the funding streams to unlock it. What we're really excited about, and to answer your question, Lynn, we've been for the last 6 months anticipating what was coming through the budget, working really closely with all of our marae trusts, our incorporated societies, like Nahiwi, who I love. When we had the National Māori Housing Conference, he's fantastic at memorable ditties, and he said to the Crown Ministers, we have our lands, we have our plans, we have our hands, just hand over your bloody grands. And so our job was to, well, have we got the land? And what we know is we've got oodles of Māori land that is properly constituted under Te Ture Whenua, where we've worked with all the landowners and understand what their aspirations are. We're now a matter of weeks away from putting up an investment proposition that's up to 200 houses on Māori land in Hastings, because there's a $730 million fund now for Māori housing and Māori infrastructure as a result of the budget process. Yeah, well, and everyone's going to be competing for it, yeah. And so we try not to be greedy, me and Stevie. We're just sort of saying, hey, it's probably 10%. 10% of the national available resource. So we'll just put our best foot forward and see how we go.
Thank you, Nigel. Very admirable. Very admirable. And I think you've also got a vision in terms of how these issues need to be addressed in the future. But the underlying thing that I appreciate some advice on is what you're doing is essentially at the moment is the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. What are those macro economic business circumstances that have put us in the position, not just as Hastings, but other entities? What are those big things that some people have ignored that have led us to this situation? Because unless we address that fundamental, there'll still be intervention at the bottom of the cliff.
Oh yeah, that's a big macro question, isn't it? Because a lot of that gets to so in our world, our biggest challenge that we have to address as a region, like we've got growth for Africa happening at the moment, record levels of infrastructure spend and stuff driven off our agri and hort base. But the bottom line is we are a two-step economy. And if you're doing really well in Hawke's Bay, you're doing really well. But if you are like a lot of our whānau are, even if the aspiration was a living wage, well, geez, it's pretty hard when the median rent now is $500 a week, and where the median house price is 800 grand. There's people wondering about, well, one, can I get a rental, let alone whether I can afford to pay it. And so, until over time, and that's a big question that probably exercises a lot of our mind. Until you can kind of reduce some of those disparities, it's.
You made, which is really salient point, is that you're stepping into the market in terms of intervention. By where if these people sell their homes within 5 years time, there's a repatriation. And that raises the bigger issue in terms of should there be a national approach in terms of some of the other levers. Because I thought that was a real good initiative.
Yeah, and look, and I think where the Crown is going, I mean, for a long time, all of the assistance has been on the demand side. Like I look at it, from my time in central government and go, whilst we all get, infatuated with geez, we're spending $1 million a day on motel accommodation for whānau, go and ask the question about how many tens of millions of dollars we're spending a day on the accommodation supplement. Our whole focus has been on demand side assistance, and I think where we've got it all wrong, and where the government, to their credit, is trying to address some of this, is until we start, so we try and celebrate, because otherwise you get pretty depressed. Like, for 2 years worth of work, well, there's 1,700 people instead of 800 in the motel. So we try and celebrate at every house, every whānau we're helping. But the key thing we're clear of, whilst we're setting record levels of building activity at the moment, 530 houses that we did last year, we have to do that every year for the next 5 years just to close the current gap. And so until we get the supply side of this right, we're not going to solve this, and that's hard. And I don't know. You could say some of the big interventions, and none of us like doing it, local or central government, is about land acquisition. Because one of the things that drives me insane from my 2 years inside a council, put a huge amount of effort into rezoning, structure planning, but we don't control the speed at which developers will choose to bring land, you know, to market, and they exist in, you know, in a market economy. Fair, you know, good luck to you. I mean, you know, it is about maximising return, but you wonder whether we're missing some of the tools or the courage to actually deal with, you know, actually on the supply side. Yeah, look, I grew up as a boy in Porirua. Dad was a 10-pound pom. He worked on the assembly line at Electrolux. Mum's a cleaner, cop, just recently retired. And we owned a home. Why did we own a home? You know, both on low wage, because they could capitalise family benefit and they could access a low interest state advances loan. That's why we owned a home, and we lived in that same home our whole life until we left home, because there was different types of interventions.
One
more. Sorry, Nigel. Can I just congratulate you, because what you're just telling us, thank goodness, I thought we had an issue in Kawerau, but we haven't really got an issue at all, looking at some of the numbers you talked about. But one thing, we're doing some development ourselves, and we've had to sneak down the line to the place called Jalco to borrow a builder.
Yeah.
How you go for contractors?
Tough. So yeah, like I don't know who's left in Taupo. I mean, all the Kāinga Ora developments that are happening at the moment have been done by Penny Homes. Penny Homes turned up to Hastings looking to subcontract locals. The locals are like, hey, we've got forward books of 18 months. So all of these houses have been built with people that have been shipped in from out of region. So it's something that we're all grappling, we're grappling with. The two things that we've focused on over the medium term, accepting that there's no short-term answers, one of the investments that's been made into Hastings, Hawke's Bay, iwi-led is $3 million Māori apprenticeship scheme through the iwi called K3. And basically looking through, again, the regional skills leadership groups, the workforce development councils, the sector folks, as the construction sector. And we've just adopted, you know, in the last year and having a lot of success with progressive procurement policies. So we're not just interested in the road or the house that we're building, we're interested in your commitment to taking on a local, to taking on an apprentice, actually pricing and getting other incentives at play. So we're at the front end of this, but there's also been investments in going, like when we look out over the next 10 years, and we've got a regional procurement director that's club funded by our 5 councils. We're working with the Crown. We've built a 10-year pipeline of what our work looks like across our LTPs and government spend. Like the vertical and horizontal infrastructure spend in Hawke's Bay is $10 billion over the next 10 years. How are we going to do that? And how we do that is by doing some deliberate stuff now about some objectives about building local firm, local enterprise, building regional market capacity, deliberately chasing some Māori outcomes through using some different levers.
Just pick up on what, and I think Gary was next to me when it happened the other day in Wellington, when the housing board people were talking about transportable homes.
Yep.
And, you know, I mean, that way you don't have to change the workforce around, you don't have to move them from one place to the other. But I know near Weber's area, Keith Hay are building some pretty good homes, and yep. I know we've got a few in Kawerau now. Yep. We've been homes up in Pinchinham out of Kawerau, we're bringing them all back again. But yep. So those are the sort of things that we probably need to start talking yep. about, particularly with our neighbour.
Yeah, look, and I think Kāinga Ora, you know, I'm not inside Kāinga Ora, but some of the conversations with the senior level, I think with the scale at which Kāinga Ora are building now, are looking at changing some production systems to go to, you know, genuine, you know, prefabrication at scale. We've got an opportunity in Hastings that we're exploring whether it comes off or not with the O'Sullivan brothers that own Tumu Timbers. We're looking at, you know, basically Hastings, the broader Hawke's Bay and East Coast, and saying, God, we've got a wall of wood. They're about to make some big commercial investments in an integrated supply chain around wood. And we're saying, you know, without pretending that we're the centre of wood excellence, except you've got that near Stevie. You know, like how do you Yeah, how do you integrate some of your supply chains and do some things at scale that change the production systems? Because in a lot of ways, we're still doing things the way we did things 20 or 30 years ago. The only real innovation's been off-site manufacturing of truss and frame. You know, we're still building in exactly the same way. And part of our challenge is we've never done it at scale to be able to invest in the production system changes, which, you know, again, I would be looking for that leadership to come from the Crown. You know, to be fair, to go, well, you're going to spend billions of dollars on intervening in the housing market. That's your opportunity to change production systems. Yeah. Mm.
Well, Nigel, I'm sure people want to continue to talk to you over a cup of tea, but thank you. It's really inspirational, so informative, and I'm sure you'll be for your head down this road. We'll be bringing you.
Well, what I will say is that the plug, we've had lots of councils and we try to be accommodating in terms of sharing. The one thing that we've organised is on Friday, the 6th of August, as a full day in Hastings for anyone that wants to turn up and look at the stuff in detail, where we're going to have the chief executives of the government agencies, myself, Mayor Sandra, and actually put on a briefing, but a basically tour across Hastings to have a look at all of these developments, the papakainga, the public housing, the affordable housing developments. So it is an open invitation to all councils on Friday, the 6th of August, to be in Hastings if you want to save the date.
Thank you. Okay, we'll have a 15-minute break so you can get some refreshments. Thank you so much. We're now going to have our verbal updates from each of you on your housing or our housing situations, and it's Mayoral first.
Thank you very much, Chair. And as I said before, we do have some issues, of course, like everybody else, but certainly not the numbers that Nigel was talking about. So our big one for our pressure is the high level of homelessness, and that is specifically 3 and 4 families live in a house. Generally, it's 3 in one house, and the other families in the garage. So that is a big issue for us in this particular the overcrowding. Significant increases in housing values, obviously, which is a big one for Kaurau. You know, we were down in the under $100,000, and now we're up to $400,000 and $500,000. So that's gone up exponentially in the last 3 to 5 years. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, you know, obviously I've sold a house last week. I think it's a great thing. From a young people trying to get into the housing market, we're under a lot of pressure now because we've got a housing development scheme going on in Kaurau. However, in defence of that, our partnership is with Generation Homes here in Taupo, and that starts off about $399,000 turnkey. But most people that have bought there locals who are spending anything to $600,000 to $700,000, and what that's doing is freeing up their older homes, their 1960, 1950 homes, and so that's a positive. The other thing is there's a lot of people coming from Tauranga and around the district, which are cashing up and coming to us and spending some significant money on some nice homes, but putting the money in the bank and buying a motorhome and living the dream. So that's as I say, good or bad. I'm not going to get into that discussion right now. Responses, council developments. We had an old school which Mrs. Tolley shut down a number of years ago, and nobody wanted it. And so this council purchased that for $70,000, and we've now put 35 sections on that, and also a reserve, which we've changed the designation of. So that's half of those have gone. 10 have gone. Everything after that is profit for the ratepayers, even though we're not in the game to make a whole lot of money, but those sections selling between 100 and 130. Is that right? Yeah, around about. So that's, you know, and that's trying to make it affordable. So the other one is a 29-unit retirement village next to our Mountain View rest home. And as we're building them, they get gobbled up immediately, mainly from, I think we've got one out of town from Gisborne, all the rest are from local people who are now, with the house prices going up, they can afford to go into that and give them a little bit of cash for the rest of their days. And so they're getting gobbled up as we build them. We can't build them quick enough now. I have to say that COVID, and I'll blame it on COVID, that was a bit of a gamble. We took this on because the Curra District Council actually funded the whole thing to a start. And that was, we took a bit of a shot in the arm for that, but that's okay. And it's starting to pay off. And all of a sudden, we're in a position now where another soccer field, is redundant soccer field, which is just over 5 hectares, is coming to our sites, and that's about the last of our land blocks that we can have. So we're changing the designation on that too, to open that up for around about 70 odd houses, give or take. But just listening to Nigel there, I think a lot of the people are saying, you know, once again, very aged population in Colorado now. So yeah, looking forward to getting that up and going. And all we have to do is we're going to talk about reviewing our district plan to consider housing density in Phil. Obviously, there's a lot of the old 1950 ideas of Kiwi quarter acre and this pokey little house parked on the front of the section where we can either bulldoze it or build around it or whatever, and you put 3 nice home units on, those sort of things. So that's about where we are. Of course, we've had a bit of a kick in the pants last week, as you would have already heard. 160 jobs have gone from Norski, but it's not all doom and gloom as yet. And I'll brief Mayor Turner because she is our neighbour. But we definitely need to work with our neighbour, obviously, for housing developments in her district to service some of the stuff that's coming into Curra District. So that's about where I am anyway. But as I say, I'll go home tonight and sleep well now when I see some of the issues that other people have got. We do have one motel absolutely full of the same issue, and that's just been sold on to a new owner who enjoys the fact that he's got full tenancy. Luckily, he's also owns the second motel in town, but he's not putting anybody from Housing New Zealand, into MSD into those ones. But yeah, it's we haven't got the big numbers like everybody else. The same problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Portuguese. So we have 3 different areas of focus in partnership at the moment. In Te Whanau Apanui, down the coast, there's a really good housing initiative underway there with Willie Te Aho, working with 5 of his hapu, and his problem that he talked to central government was around a lot of unconceded homes and people living in cars, caravans, or cow sheds. The way that the council's trying to help is to work around the consenting and work through a timeline and taking a little project of 5 dwellings to do them up, to get to see what is needed, and Willie has been able to bring in funding to help that happen. Kaianga Ora, on the public housing, we see this as actually low-hanging fruit within Opotiki, and we have been promised some houses within the next 18 months, and I think the top number was 30, but we've actually done our own homework and produced a map that shows all of the Kaianga Ora sites in Opotiki, and with infill and additionality, the 89 sites could possibly produce in the next while 220 more dwellings.
So that's we're very keen to see that that is working through, and hoping, like anything, that we can get in the meantime transportable, relocatable houses in. The tenants will need to be rehoused, and then for the projects to be going ahead. Very excited about this because the potential is there, and we have actually twice now gone and taken our Kaianga order people around to show them the empty sections that they didn't actually know they had. So there is the good thing about all of these ones in town, not all of them, some are in the wrong place, but a lot of them, they're fully serviced. They're ready to go. They're sites that are ready to go. The second thing we're looking at, and we'll be putting a business case into the Housing Acceleration Fund, is around Hukataya up on the hill. And we've got something that looks like this. So the pink bits on this hill are where the housing are located at the moment. All of these are on septic tanks. And what we're hoping to do, the green field space there is about 70 hectares. Obviously not all of it, but we're working towards putting that through. A large part of that will come back to Whakatoia, our town iwi, who will be looking to I'm sure, for housing on that hill. So the partnership there is actually quite aspirational. Now, what we're doing in the next year is ensuring that all of the planning is taking place. We are very pleased about thinking that this is the right place, because we're moving a lot of the new housing away from the what will be the flooding areas in the northern part of the town. That the southern end of Opotiki, the land is still high enough for us to be moving forward with lots of building. But up on the hill, we're taking away mitigating the climate change issues. And we are really also wanting to further at the end of our 10-year plan, taking a lot of those septic tanks out of use as well. So some really good initiatives there. How many houses? We're not sure, but we're aiming high. We have worked out that we need to have 57 a year to maintain a balance. And at the moment, our consents for construction is showing that we're up above that. And there are other private developments going on as well. We do have land, and we have service land that we can put houses on almost immediately. And hopefully with this initiative, we'll have more service land as well. This Green Hills place has water and stormwater already there. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Stevie Rotorua Lakes Council.
It's followed by Hastings. So an update for us. We were just the second to get a housing strategy with government, and that is working with iwi on the implementation of that now. So we're underway, and the first focus has been on our solution for those in motels. Our crisis, we made it a humanitarian crisis of 388 mothers and children in motels. So that had to be managed first. And now we're well underway with that. And we've been incredibly well supported by the government agencies on that. And we're now turning our focus to the medium and the long term. I think for us, when we signed the housing strategy with government, we thought then we needed about 1,700 homes. But when you get much deeper into the analysis, when you have all the partners around the table, we've said that we're short of 1,800 houses, and we need 2,000 houses right now and another 1,000 over the next 2 years. and 30% of those need to be social housing. And then we need another 3,000 by 2030. So this is an enormous aspirational stretch that we're needing, and a further 4,000 sections by 2030. So we're now seen as a growth area, and we are growing in spite of what the media tries to portray. So our focus now is opening up for greenfield development, Pukehangi, that was a plan change that we needed with the Minister for the Environment. We're promoting intensification. We're enabling development, infrastructure consenting. On average, we consent approximately 100. Yeah. And we're partnering to achieve social housing with Mayoral and iwi, and that's going really well. The challenge for us now, we had a task force in Rotorua for 6 weeks, and it was impressive to see when you get TPK, Mayoral, MHUD with iwi and with council working together with heads of the DCE there at the table, how well we can work together on what our targets are. And we're now looking and asking government for a governance model that's not with kaimahi. We want direct sponsorship from ministers, whether it's through DCEs with ministerial oversight. That's the sort of approach. So we want to keep the concept of the task force moving, and because it's not just social housing and homeless, it's actually that whole continuum of housing, and you can see our very ambitious targets. So we've got the year of government, and it's been a very positive initiative now, but the targets ahead of us that we put the Chief Executive ambitious and driving on outcomes of social wellbeing, not just housing, and community development and building connected communities. So it includes all the infrastructure around roading, and so it's a very ambitious approach. Yep, I think I will get there on the governance model, but it was the working together over those 6 weeks that I have to say had to be locally led, had to be informed by the other government agencies, accept the stretch that we need and be ambitious and be bold, and then what's the governance structure of that entity. So that's where we're at, and it's a huge ask. And I have to say, I don't think our community understands it. They don't understand the complexity of what we're looking at now in terms of meeting climate change objectives, as well as the infrastructure investment needed. Stormwater, we're not a Hastings, we're a Caldera, and everything drains down to the lakes. So we're managing huge investment needed in stormwater and the three waters. So that investment is helping, but there's so many investment buckets that we have to plunder. That would be great if it was more straightforward. That's probably it.
Thank you, Stevie. Okay, total. Well, our Economic Development Organisation, Amplify, recently completed a study on housing issues in our district. And the key findings were that there are strong socio-economic contrasts within the district, and that's also reflected in housing conditions and housing affordability. The zoning of land for residential purposes is not a major problem, rather the cost of developing the land and building of houses is our actual problem. There's a severe shortage in the district of public housing for the disadvantaged and vulnerable families and individuals. And there's also a severe shortage of affordable rentals and home ownership opportunities for the lower and middle income families. Airbnbs had a major effect on our rental market, with some dire consequences for families that have lost homes that they had been renting long term. We've got around 1,200 consents a year, and they've escalated rapidly over the last few years. We're receiving around 9 consents a day, and most of those are residential. The median house price here is 700,000. Dramatic change over the last couple of years. It's up 34.6% on the same time last year. Sales over 750,000 are more than 40% of sales, and sales over $1 million account for 16.5% of all sales. And anecdotally, 80% of sales to people out of Taupo wanting to buy and move here. I said to you before, they're pouring in. And of course, our population is growing way ahead of what was predicted. But the key actions that we're undertaking as a council are, we've included funding in the LTP so that we can scope further the issues around housing and plan to address the issues, have a plan to address the issues. Key areas of social focus, papakāinga social housing, pensioner housing and affordable housing. And the district plan review is considering whether there's sufficient zoning for land, particularly papakāinga. Housing is included on the Taupo Collective Governance Group meetings and their priority of actions, and the collective is a group of tūwhare toa and key government agencies. Council and collective group, including iwi and government agencies, are considering how best to address the growing issue of very inadequate housing popping up on Maori-owned land. And a purely regulatory response is unlikely to resolve the issues, and we've literally got hundreds of people moving into land near Acacia Bay. They're hidden from us, but the housing is very substandard, and of course the sewage is going directly into the lake, and it is a real issue, but we're looking to wrap services around them so that we can bring it up to standard, because since COVID people have just brought home. That's the reality of it. So I guess our issues are very, very similar to most other people's. I think our growth is something that we weren't expecting, and something that's really struck me. A lot of people come to me with their issues, and sometimes they're easy to fix, but the housing ones never are. And I'm amazed at how many older people are working into their 80s because they've got no way to pay their rent. And it's really heartbreaking when they sit in front of you and beg you for a solution. And we haven't got anything to offer. You know, the little bit of pensioner housing we've got is chock-a-block with great big waiting lists, and really it's inadequate housing anyway. We need to do something dramatic. So for me, it's just reminded me recently how many older people I've seen, and it really pulls on your heartstrings, and there's no easy answer. So that's us. Okay, Western Bay of Plenty, Gary.
Thank you. I suppose we have a dilemma in that we surround the fifth fastest growing city in New Zealand, but equally that growth we are seeing. And I talked about our special housing call. Those houses will land at house land packages, real modern, for under $500,000. If you go across the Mayoral Road, where there is a subdivision being done by private enterprise, some of the sections are selling for $680,000. And the point that Darren, we keep on making to Darren, and if you want to overcome the house prices, you cannot leave it to the market. And that's one of the difficulties we have in our part of the world. One of our neighbours thinks the market will solve it, and yes, they do, at over $1 million, which doesn't solve the problem. So we're of the opinion it has to be intervention by local government or central government, and then put around as some rules which enable the houses, and like Hastings, our houses, if the people sell them in the first couple of years, there is we click the ticket on the way back to make sure they're not getting in there. In terms of our pensioner housing, we're looking at it the same basis. If we develop it, and we went out to a long-term plan to say council is going to redevelop its pensioner housing, what's your view? And a very high support for it. So I think if you test the public, because we said this is essential, we're able to develop that. We're looking at our district plan to enable 6 stories high. Because the underlying land value in our part of the world is $2 million a hectare. And that's what drives it. And it'll come to your part of the world in Waikato, in other parts of the Bay of Plenty, because that's the opportunity cost. That's what a kiwi fruit grower will pay to get into it. So that's what we're competing against. So the only way we can see is by allowing to go up and taking some of the interventions ourselves. The other thing, we changed our district plan about 2 years ago now. We've enabled the kiwi fruit orchard or the kiwi fruit industry to build up to 200 kiwi fruit staff accommodation on their own facilities. And the big players have done that. They just understand it's their problem. They need to go. So we've enabled them to do that. That's those are the sorts of things. So I think there is ways, but Steve and I have. To me, a lot of the analysis that needs to be done is needs based, because people are coming to Tauranga and you see it. A property on Marine Parade, $3.7 million. That's so people at the top end, it's affordable for everybody, but at the bottom end we haven't got it. There's one other thing that I observed that I think we as a collective really have to take a long, hard look at ourselves and say, have we, as this collective group, got our heads in the right space? And it follows your comment, Doug, about the underlying issue at Hastings. Well, I spent a fair bit of time at Hastings as well. When all those freezing works started to close down, you've got generational unemployment. I think we as a sub-region or as a region, when you look at what's happening in Wakatani, what's happening in Mayoral, with 2 big employers, and what Stevie's faced with the lack of tourism, unemployment. So when you're looking at putting houses on the ground's easy, but what is the employment opportunities for these? Where are the kids going to go to school? Where are they going to get their services? So we've got to look more at placemaking, and I think a long, hard look at Mayoral and Wakatani. We as a sub-region have to say, how can we support this? Same as we looked at Rotorua, because it's going to take a long time for those things to come back. We will have unemployment. So coming back in 15 years' time and say, oh, geez, we dropped the ball there, or as opposed to say, hey, what can we do now to try and make sure that we drive some of these that Hastings are looking at. When we go out to procure things, why don't we say you have to employ this number of people on the roading contracts? How do we get that employment back in? Because we are in a reasonably big growing area, so we should be able to put some of that in place. So it's more of an overview of the high level. We're struggling through. We're trying to pull all levers. We're working really closely with Kainora. We think they've got money in their pockets. They're just not too sure how to work out to get it. But it's the thing on either side of your trousers, Derek. Just go in there and pick it out. But that's the thing. We're trying to sign an agreement with some affordable housing on the Omokara thing with Kainora. It's taken us 5 years. When Mary Minor first talked about it, we're trying to ink the deal. And we've got to get more nimble than that. Sorry, Darren, you're bigger than me, so that's a proud part of it.
Thank you very much. Okay, Whakatane District Council. Me too. First 9 years I was on council, the message from Stats New Zealand was you're a region in decline. Set your sail accordingly and get over it. And then all of a sudden, in the last 18 months, they've changed their mind and we're now a surge region. Which is quite a big change. And that does mean that our current district plan needs a review around spatial planning for housing. We have obviously got allowance for some, but not as much as I think we're now going to need. However, we also have a huge amount of multiple and Maori land that there are aspirations around papakainga. So I think the message about partnership
in terms of making sure that we enable that. And I know, and on that matter, our district plan is very enabling. So that's not a problem. We're really keen to see that happen and do what we can to encourage that. Just an interesting, I had a briefing a month or so ago from MSD, and they told me a very disturbing figure. They were talking nationally, they weren't talking specifically Whakatane, they didn't have local numbers. But currently in New Zealand, they have discovered 1 in 10 high school students don't know where they're going to sleep tonight. So if you add that to your perspective of the problem of homelessness, that's pretty scary. We have had a visibly big problem with homelessness in the last 3 or 4 years. That's dropped considerably due to the really good efforts of those who run emergency and transitional housing, which was Aotearoa and Salvation Army, did a very good job. But one of the things we found with those people was that they did not access or even register as homeless with authorities. And so I asked a friend of mine to do a head count for just around the CBD of Whakatane, going into one summer. And I said, just count the people who are sleeping around or in vehicles. And he said, what do you think it is? And I said, oh, I think it could be 20. 53, including children. And the sad thing was when they approached them, people ran away, picked up and quickly ran away. So there was a huge amount of shame and also an inability to make contact. So we set up a business called a breakfast club, provided breakfast 5 mornings a week with staffed by volunteers, but to make contact with those people so that we could get them on the list and guide them through the process to get them started into social housing. So some of those problems is an unwillingness to front up. We have no idea about overcrowded housing. I'm sure we have them, we just don't know any numbers, and that's a lot more private and difficult to quantify. So, I think, we really do need to build and hear from Kaingaora around what our numbers are and what we're looking at. They've done some new builds, and I think, quite frankly, we need a lot more. And one of the things we've now been told with the growth that we have already had and see coming our way is we should be building between 100 and 150 new houses a year. As I said, we've got some building developments going, but the concern for me is around the affordable end of the housing market. Council's got a couple of opportunities that we haven't firmed up yet, but are coming our way that could maybe provide some land for us to consider doing housing development. And I really like what we heard today about the fact that if we stay more proactively in that, rather than just passing on to developers, we could actually get that balance, which I'm concerned about not getting. And most of our current housing development is medium to high end, and certainly not in that affordable range. And then how do we get people into home ownership as well as at that low income end of the spectrum is I think a huge challenge for us. We are a big red blob on the deprivation index in New Zealand with a couple of tiny communities. But the other thing we also considering is climate change. We've got a lot of coastal development. Is that the way forward for more housing? Maybe not. And then that becomes more challenging. So for us, it's going to be not just looking at what housing we need, but where best to place it so that it is meaningfully connected to jobs, transport, and retail type opportunities for people, particularly if you're going to have a mixed use and affordable end of the market. It needs to be so. I think it's just bigger than finding some land to dump some houses on and manage the process. It's also about spatial planning is big. And I do think particularly in the Eastern Bay of Plenty, our collective work in that regard is going to be really important. We know that people live all over our 3 districts. We have people that live in one district who work in the other one, and vice versa. And so we need to have that in mind and realise that all our interests are kind of connect up where that's helpful and possible. One of the things we did own when I was first on council, we owned, I think it was 70 pensioner units. A previous mayor had looked at selling those to retired debt, and the community picked up a really big noise about it, and so it got stopped. But then when the government brought in the income-related rent subsidies and councils couldn't be recognised as accredited providers, we realised, so our stock at the time, we were coping with ordinary maintenance. For a new lino and a lick of paint was fine. We could fund that out of what we were getting in low rent. But we certainly were heading towards some serious upgrades that were going to be needed, and without any ability to do income-related rent subsidies, that wasn't going to be possible. So we agreed to sell them to somebody who was accredited, and would bring that ability for the maintenance that was coming fast their way. So we don't now own those pensioner houses, but they are owned by an accredited housing provider who has that ability to do what we were unable to do. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. I think that our next thing is we do need to hear some really clear information from Mayoral. I think that's not something we're really clear about what they understand we need. And the other concern that I do have is that we found that amongst people with housing difficulty, particularly homeless people, they could see no point in going registering, getting their name on the list, because in their mind the list is so long, they'll never get one anyway, and unless they have special circumstances, they're unlikely to be considered. What we were trying to say to them is that some of the other social housing providers expect you to be on that list to start off with before they'll even look at you, to try and get them through the process, but it is complicated. And that's why people need some sort of navigating support often to get themselves through those processes. So it's quite a complicated thing. I love what I heard today. That spins my wheels. It's given me some ideas about things that we could be thinking about as a council. And particularly, I'm very attracted to the land ownership idea and what that enables. So, as I say, we've got a couple of opportunities that are still a work in progress. We'll see what happens there. But maybe we need to proactively look beyond those as well, because the growth is now coming our way. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair. So not to repeat what's been said, and you know we don't provide housing, we try to facilitate the outcomes that will deliver that housing. So, but we've got some significant issues that we're trying to deal with as a regional council in terms of housing provision. First one, front of mind, is issues in the Western Bay, essentially Tauranga City, in conjunction with Western Bay Council. There's a challenge in integrating provision of housing together with public transport. It's driven by a whole lot of demands from the Crown in terms of carbon reduction, shared use in terms of cycle, walkways and pathways. We're challenging an ethos where people think they use their car as of right, it's someone else's problem. So that's an issue that we're trying to deal with. Tauranga is not well serviced in terms of available land. You've got a hub and spoke type environment where building on the ridges, and you have to have infill in terms of natural environment in the valleys. So sitting behind all that is also the natural hazards and climate change issues that we need to deal with, because that across the region, less so in Mayoral, has some issues for communities, but essentially that's about our appetite for risk, and it's about our appetite for litigation. I think it's as simple as that. And despite what we say about climate change, sea level rise, you all know where the highest value properties are in terms of Bay of Plenty, are the ones closest to the sea, or the waterways. That's the commercial reality. So somewhere in there, I don't know whether it's right in terms of the current states of the natural hazards, liquefaction and all that stuff, but we've got to have an ongoing discussion with our communities, because it's the local authorities that have to implement that natural hazards assessment. What else have we got? We support and working with the councils in terms of spatial planning. That's really important. We're also there to try and implement the NPS in terms of urban development. Regional land transport, as vexed as some of those issues are, we're blessed with creating the regional land transport plan, which feeds into the National Land Transport Plan. You all know the challenges around that in terms of Waka Kotahi and their lack of money. I can't see that being resolved anytime in the short term. That also flows in terms of Waka Kotahi's ability in terms of the maintenance at your TA level, in terms of your local roads, because I think that's going to come under pressure in terms of your share, your historic share, so you can do that job. That's high expectation, both in terms of the state highway network and the local roads network from your communities, relative to the amount of cars you see on the road. We want to enable, we have done for a long time, the regulatory framework around OSEP in terms of public hiring and development. So that's always been on our agenda. And a few new things. We've got sustainable measures for healthy homes. That's been an ongoing thing for those who've been involved in that area of activities. So in the Eastern Bay of Plenty, you had energy options, which have been doing that for a long time in conjunction with ECA. The regional councils put its toe in the water in terms of that. So we're talking about insulation, we're talking about clean heating, we're talking about subsidies, either full or in part, in terms of PV, which is essentially solar. And we've got $2 million on the table. Small money in terms of the whole context of things, but we'll see what the appetite from is the community. The big issue there is, as a local authority, should we stand in the market with no market failure? Because historically, my experience in the energy options days were the people who picked, because that was in conjunction with the DHBs as well, the people who picked it up weren't necessarily the people that you're aiming for.
So thank you very much. And it's been good to share that because everyone has some differences as well as many commonalities. We were actually talking in the tea room about how important land is, but I also said that the advantage that Hastings has is actually Nigel's relationships with Wellington. And I think that we forget how important that is, and Stevie has them too. And it is always an advantage to know people and to put time into those relationships and work on so that they know us and we know them, and then it's much easier to get. It's not always easy to get support, but it helps. And yeah, we sometimes get tied up in our own things and forget how important and precious that is. Okay, so moving on, the Three Waters update. Miriam.
Kia ora tātou. I'm just mindful of time, so I'm going to give you a pretty quick summary. Just to sum up, really, I've been involved in the steering group, but if you think back to 15 months, 18 months ago, the government was leading reform in the Three Waters space based on the Hastings issue and a number of other issues, but basically this is government-led reform, and I would say that the trainers left the station. We have to work out whether we want to be on board with that. We were fortunate to be invited to be around the table with the government on this. I mean, we might have thought that would have been normal, but I would say for the other reforms, we're not necessarily in this space. So we had a really good working relationship, particularly with DIA, which is running this Three Waters reform process. So I think that's helped the government a lot in terms of making sure that we don't have some really, really big issues or some major fails. But the government's definitely saying there's a compelling case for change based on affordability and safety and economic development and environmental. So that's the space they're in, and we're carrying on assisting them with where they want to go in that space. Whether we all get on board or not has not really hit us. So you know that we've got freshwater reform, we've got the RMA reform, and we've also got the future for local government. You might think that the order of things is out of kilter, but it is what it is, and it's being run by separate ministers. So that's why we've kind of got this bit of a hodgepodge. But anyway, we're trying to make the best of this. The government will definitely have a new structure in place by the 1st of July 2024. It will include the Three Waters, but in terms of stormwater, it's not going to include some of the things we think about, which we deal with in stormwater. I think that will come with time. I think stormwater is it's got a long tail. So you would have been will know about the consultation with Tangata Whenua and the comms. That's been managed centrally by DIA for the government, so we haven't really been involved too much in that. I would say I think that might have been undercooked, this is just my view, and that opinion has been given through that, you know, I think they might have underestimated that, because if you're thinking through, it's probably a model for co-governance and how we dealt with that. So that would be one of the trickiest aspects of this whole reform. Anyway, so that's rolling out. And all councils have been involved more or less in providing information on that detailed RFI, or not so detailed RFI, which happened earlier this year and involved a lot of staff time. So it's the most comprehensive information that's been gathered by all local government on the three waters. The quality of that information obviously relies on the officers that provided it, but generally some review of that's been done, and that's a reasonably good level. There are some pockets of probably questionable data reliability, but in terms of everyone answered all the same questions, so that RFI has formed the basis, not your long-term plans, but the RFI information has formed the basis for the calculations that's been done by the government through Scottish Water, which you've seen those numbers that have come out in those 4 reports recently. So that's WICS, I think that's the Water Industry Commission in Scotland. Right. And in terms of us, we asked to make sure there's some critiquing and review being done of that data, because there was initially some real panic about some of the numbers that came out. So Farius, Weir, and Deloitte and Becker have done those reviews independently, and they've all kind of come to the same conclusion that if anything, the data and the information that we're seeing is probably a little bit undercooked. So the range could be bigger. So just to reiterate, it does include the three waters, and you will have seen those communications coming out from DIA about what to expect next. The next thing is the actual individual dashboards that will come out for each council on what that information is set in a snapshot in terms of, an easy read, not the detailed information. So if you're expecting the dashboards to come out with a whole lot of really, really detailed info, it's not going to be at that level, but it has been gathered at that level. And that will show, hopefully, in an understandable way, where councils are at the moment if they continue on operating on their own, and where councils would be as an estimate if they were part of the board. And it's different for different countries. So that's due to come at the end of June. I expect it will be the first week in July because we're running a little bit behind. But I understand there might be some announcements at the local government conference as well, but I'm not privy to those things. So we're on track to have the water services entity bill enacted by mid-2022. Think about that. So the big concern for us as local authorities and where we want to have some say is how we're going to transition this for those councils that are going to be on board. Because at this stage, it's still not compulsory. And I don't know whether it's going to be compulsory or not, but we have to assume it's not. So the transition is the worrying thing, because we want to make sure that that transition is seamless for the users of those services. And we want to also make sure that the people employed in those sectors, which is in local government, that we can keep the right people in the right place. And also, if you think if you're going to have a transitional authority, you're probably going to have double up. So there are going to be some really big issues on that, but we also need to make sure that combining, 67 local authorities, contractual employment terms and conditions, rating, how they rate for all of these three waters is actually really, really complex. We'll have to work our way through that, but that's already commenced. So that is the biggest piece of work that needs to be done. What else do you want to know? Things that have been asked are, when we transition, will all our debt go with these entities? My understanding is yes. On the other side, if you have got cash reserves, then the same holds because you've rated for that under utilities. So at this stage, if councils have accumulated lots of reserves, and most councils haven't, never been able to accumulate reserves in that space, but some have, then they would probably go with that entity as well. So there won't be an ability to cherry pick. The idea is it would still be a user pay system. So it wouldn't be a subsidisation by all ratepayers. So that's my understanding, that where it's user pays now, it will transition to that. Stormwater is a different issue, and it will have a different regime altogether. Because the benefits of that lie with all of the population. But in terms of wastewater and water, and it's likely to be volumetrically based. So if you want to go and look at those independent reports, there was an email that came out from DIA, I think about 10 days ago. You can go onto their webpage and look up the Three Waters Reform Program, and it'll talk about those as evidence-based, but that's where we're at the moment. We're getting to the pointy bit, which is basically the implementation of whatever's going to happen. In terms of how that's going to roll out consultation-wise and how things are actually going to hit the road later in the year, that hasn't been resolved yet. And I'm sure that will be part of the discussion of NZ. That's me.
Thank you, Miriam. And not because of time, if anyone's got any questions for the next, they can discuss it with you over lunch, unless it's on burning.
Hopefully it helps a little bit, a bit of context around it.
No, it has. Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, Fiona, you're going to talk to us about the workshop on Monday.
I'll be even briefer because most people were here, except for the councils that were doing the long-term plan deliberations. I found it incredibly positive. It talked about the opportunities going forward for the future of local government. It was the opportunity for people to put forward ideas and suggestions in terms of short-term and long-term opportunities. All of that information will be compiled, and the panel will be coming back in September with an issues paper. But it was a very, very positive day from my experience, but some of the mayors or chair might also want to comment.
Does anyone?
Yes, I thought that it was quite good that once that initial draft conceptual paper goes in the following year, that the panel were keen to be visiting every individual council, which I thought was exceptional from their point of view and how much work they would have to do that. Because they have a whole year after that to then put in the next report for consultation in September 2022.
Thank you. Any other?
Thanks, Christine. These are two issues that I think we run the risk of paying scant attention to when they are the issues that we should be focusing on as a Mayoral Forum the most. These two issues are inextricably linked. There is no getting away from that. One will drive the other, doesn't matter which one you want to drive at. The disappointing thing about the forum the other day, and I know from speaking to the chair that it's a discussion yet to happen, the question is local government, we should be asking ourselves, and this is not local government by opinion, local government per se, is how come we've ended up in the position that we have, where the Crown has had to actually take a stance in the market to fix what is probably an indefensible position that local government finds ourselves in. Hence, if these three water entities are taken off local government, what is the future of local government? But as I said, the first question I think needs to be answered is, how have we ended up in this position? And until we have that debate and have some recognition at a local government level, we're going to struggle. One of the historic catch cries in terms of local government is funding. And we all, some 2 years ago, I think, put a lot of weight on the Infrastructure Commission, who went and looked at local government funding. And to the surprise of everybody, the disdain of everybody, they came back and said, look, we think funding tools are appropriate, which was a real snake in the face for all of us, because we still understand those funding tools aren't. So those are some of the big challenges that are, I think, in front of us, because as we all know, if something happens in terms of the three waters, either whole or in part it's taken from you, funding issues became even more important in terms of the future activities we may or may not want to be involved in. So I urge you to take a real active role in these discussions. It may be worthwhile that this forum has half a day session getting their heads around what are some of the issues and how our approach as the region we should be thinking about dealing with it.
And maybe a standing item on the agenda for the future. So how do you go about, if you're going to have a forum, a special morning on it, how do you go about organising that for someone to take responsibility for it?
And could I just add, Christine, because I think it's important. Criticism across local government is not in every entity. There are some entities that have done really well, but unfortunately we're judged by the lowest common denominator. And as Miriam said, you know, there are those entities who have no debt. They might have rubbish assets, but they've got no debt. And there are theirs that have got rubbish assets, and they might have high debt. So somewhere in there is the financial considerations as to how you're going to put all these entities together. You might have an entity that's cash reserve, got plenty of cash reserves. You might have someone who doesn't have cash reserves, but the earning capacity of their assets is generational in terms of they prepare themselves well, but they might have a high debt. So there's a lot of complexity around this that I'm glad Miriam's sitting on the forum that's trying to chart their way through it.
Thanks, Judy and Gary.
Look, I want to push back a little bit, throw the ball back at central government on this, and because I actually think that, I think it was one of our own local government publications a couple of years ago, talked about the fact that amongst OECD countries, we love to compare ourselves with, the amount of public money that is spent and decided locally is around about 30%. In New Zealand, it's between 12 and 18%. And my old boss told me that he supported the introduction of GST because they were promised that a percentage of that would go to local government to offset rates. We are underfunded, and particularly when you are governing a high deprivation, then where affordability is a real issue. I mean, I accept that sometimes we, I know Councillor Mayor Weber would say that sometimes we have been foolish in terms of holding back to it for a political reason. I accept that. I think that's a very good point. But and all of us have a degree of deprivation in little pockets of it. But some of us have got more than little pockets. We have two green dots which are not deprivation. One is a Hawke's Beach and one is coastal. The rest is red on the map. And so therefore we can't ignore affordability, and we need more funding tools at our disposal. That's the way to it. And they hold on to more than they should. I'm sorry, they hold on to way more than they should. And they need to be challenged about that.
Thank you, Gary and Steve.
Our council is an outlier. We were one of the councils that submitted that there is nothing wrong with funding tools in local government. We have survived. We've got some of the highest rates. We have taken our debt from 180 down to about 100 million, but invested significantly. We're a large growth area. The issue, and Doug pointed out, we come from an industry. When I joined the dairy industry in 1981, there was 51 dairy companies, and we can do it best. When I left about 25 years later, there was 3. And what happened, and I welcome those who want to stay in the current status quo with their 3 waters, and come back in 20 years and see how many councils are left, because those that are ducking for cover right now, and it was a pity not more of us were at Rural Provincial last week. The number of councils that are operating on expired resource consents. If the EPA said tomorrow, this is the standard, and you will get up to that standard within 2 years, how many councils are going to receivership? I'd say about 30% of them in New Zealand, on my count. We are not facing up to, and the other thing that I think on the reform, most councillors that I've seen, and I must admit I'm critical of local government, they don't understand the difference between governance and politics.
Absolutely.
Standing on a soapbox saying, I'm going to fix this football field, and then coming along and trying to run a $100 million business, they do not understand. We've got too many councillors. Democracy is not a skill test. And we have to face up to this, because that's what central government's looking at. Look, no disrespect to poor old Tim, But is that how you run an organisation with a $200 million turnover? No, but this is the public domain. I'm not saying anything new, but that's what central government's looking at. They've been looking at it for 10 years. And you can't walk through our main city because of that fountain might pop up in front of you. The only difference is whether it's clear water or leaficated water. We cannot survive, and we have to face up as local government. We have to face up to that reality.
Thank you.
And when Miriam talks about the problems that are coming up the lift with 3 waters, she abandoned ship in 5 weeks.
Oh. Stephen.
I think you're demonising local government. I think we've been local leaders of our communities and we fought with changes of levers at central government, and they're not the devil either. I think it's time for us to look at that emerged partnership approach about how we address the challenges that we're facing as communities now and stop blaming the past. I could give a list, even when we were in government, when the opposition was in government, of mistakes made that we all know about: drinking water subsidies, or sewage subsidies, gone, all those things. Don't worry about them. I think the way forward for us to have credibility, and government sees it when we work in partnership with government, and that is the only way, it is the only model going forward, and that includes local leadership, working with government and with iwi, and showing leadership on our issues. I agree with you on the 3 waters. It's a rolling train, and I think it's about the coalition of the willing getting going and getting the best deal that we can, and that's our approach locally, but there's some bottom lines that we won't trade on there, and that's about probably subsidiarity, and I think iwi have the power to overturn where the 3 waters are going. The future's one that we've got to face together. I find the review challenging, actually, because we're spinning on a sixpence in the local government sector, and we all know that. Capability is an enormous issue for every council, and we're a medium-sized council. We're not a small council, but to respond to the issues that are being driven centrally and the move to centralisation leaves the big question about what is our community going to look like in the future, and what sort of leadership model does that community, is it going to require? So we've got to be in the discussion. I like the idea of getting together, but I'm sick of blaming the past. I think it's time to, and you've been there in central government, so have you, Jeff, and so have you, Fiona, but we all come from fused backgrounds, but it's about creating the future that's best for our communities. And the discussions we're having, I'm a bit tired of those discussions just yet. I'd quite like the 3 water train to slow down a bit, but it's not going to. And I think our focus must be on that. And then where else can we work together with the coalition of the willing, really?
Well, thank you all for your contributions. Obviously, it's going to be something we want to continue to discuss and debate. The only thing I would say is big is not best, and you only have to look at Auckland and the disaster that Auckland is, and I've worked in there. It is a disaster, and it continues to be. Don't let them do that. If I have any contribution to make to it or not, it's not the right way forward. But anyway, we are now going to talk about correspondence from the Honourable Dr. Woods, and Doug, you're going to talk to us about that.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's just for
It's just for, is it for noting? Sorry, I thought it was more than that. I do apologise. Okay, climate change monitoring report. Fiona.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to note, Minister Woods was an apology for the mayoral form today. We asked if she could attend, and she wasn't available, but she is available and has asked if the mayoral form can meet with her on the 10th of August from 3:30 to 4 o'clock. So we're working on that.
What day of the week is that?
Oh, right. So there are some times that she's asked to meet with the mayoral form going forward, but we'll do that outside the meeting. But just to note,
Friday, Tuesday.
And just to note that she's been keen to come. She wasn't able to come today, but she is keen to come in the future. So there were some times coming out for Thank you, Tony. Just in terms of time, you had previously endorsed priority areas for the region, one being climate change, one being housing, one being social inequity and the future for local government. This report is a monitoring report for you on climate change. I just want to draw your attention to the risk assessment work and how that will benefit locally, sub-regionally and regionally. I'm very happy to answer any questions on the report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Fiona, any questions? No, not at this stage.
Comment on the minister. Remember, a lot of this work we talk about is being done by DIA. The Minister of Internal Affairs is quite happy to hear some stuff as well if we just think of that.
Oh,
she is a friend of ours and she lives in our patch. So,
thank you for that. Thank you. And Stevie, our last item.
A small item, but I'll take that. We got the challenge, Doug, when I met you said the issues that we need to look at on a wider regional basis. And then we had the pleasure of the local government caucus visit to council, where they too talked about what are some of that they're burning platform issues. But we did raise the issue about UDSAR working with Tauranga, Hamilton and Auckland and forgetting a little bit about Taupo and Rotorua. And their ears pricked up and they said if you could bring to us something that we could work on with the wider region, which includes Waikato Regional Council and Bay of Plenty Regional Council, Fiona, they'd be really interested. And they were interested in light rail. They know the rail freight proposition, but they were looking at the light rail to connectivity to Auckland. And that's Jamie Strange, who's now stepping into regional development. And then the other question was, where could a race course be that is in the wider, and they mean wider region. So they mean between Waikato, Bay of Plenty and Bay of Plenty. Because actually, if you look at the report that was done on race courses, New Zealand First is now not part of the mix. So it's time to look at a regional facility. It reminded me of the velodrome discussion that we had, and we contributed to it, and it's been a benefit to us all in a much wider region. So I said I'd put on the table those two opportunities in terms of our economic development agencies looking at those, including, I suppose, Fiona, Regional Council and Sport Bay of Plenty and Sport Waikato. So I'm just putting them on the table so it keeps us moving. It will drag us into the UDSAR debate because Taupo and Rotorua have not been there. So I'm saying it's a diamond, not a triangle.
Excellent, thank you, Stevie. I hear on the grapevine that Winston is about to relaunch himself at the weekend, so I'm sure that'll be. I don't know, but it's all on. Well, look, we've come to the end of our morning. The next Mayoral Forum is on Friday, the 15th of October in Whakatane. We will look very forward to that. And Miriam, I've just picked up that you're leaving shortly, and I'm sure you've made a big contribution to this forum. So if we're not going to be seeing you at another, thank you on behalf of everybody, and I wish you well in your future. Oh, no, that would be wonderful. Oh, please, thank you very much, and thank you to all of you. It's been lovely, lovely to meet you and get to know you a little. Thank you so much.